There's a secret Tibetan monks have guarded for 800 years, and today you'll discover why they never wanted it to reach the modern world. It's 3 a.m. You're lying in bed, but your mind is a whirlwind. Thoughts jump from one worry to another. Tomorrow's work, that awkward conversation, bills due, the uncertain future. It's like your head's a radio tuned to 10 different stations at once. You've tried meditation, downloaded the apps, sat in silence, but nothing worked, right? Because when you close your eyes, the chaos only gets louder, like someone cranked up the volume on your thoughts. But there's something you don't know, something that completely changed my life, and it could change yours too. In 1947, a Harvard University researcher made a discovery that shocked the scientific world. He was studying a group of Tibetan monks who'd arrived in the United States fleeing the Chinese invasion. These monks possessed an ability that defied everything science knew about the human brain. They could silence their minds completely, not just quiet the thoughts, silence them. In 3 minutes, when they attached electrodes to the monks' brains, the scientists thought their equipment was broken. The brainwaves showed a pattern never before recorded in medical literature. It was as if they held a secret key to turning off the mind's autopilot. But here's what impressed me most. When the monks were asked how they did it, the answer was always the same. We cannot teach this. This knowledge is dangerous in the wrong hands. Dangerous? What? That word echoed in my mind for months. Why would a breathing technique be dangerous? What did they know that we didn't? And most importantly, why were they hiding it from the world? The answer came to me in a way I never imagined, through a man who dedicated his entire life to deciphering the mysteries of human consciousness, Eckhart Tolle. Have you ever had that weird moment when you're driving and suddenly realize you don't remember the last 5 miles? Or when you're showering and your mind is completely somewhere else? These are glimpses of what the monks can access voluntarily. Tolle discovered a specific breath, a breath not taught in any popular meditation course, a breath the monks called the bridge between worlds. And I need to be honest with you, when I first tried it, I thought it was just another generic technique. Deep breaths, counting to 10, things everyone's already tried. But after 30 seconds, something shifted. It was like someone lowered the volume on a song that had been playing too loud for years. For the first time in a long time, I could hear the silence between my thoughts. But let me tell you exactly what happened. Because the experience was far more intense than I expected. It was 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd slept poorly, my mind racing with work problems. I'd just read about this technique in an ancient text Tolle had translated directly from Tibetan. I sat on the edge of the bed, closed my eyes, and began. The breath isn't what you imagine. It's not slow and deep like in yoga. It's not rapid like the Wim Hof method. It's something entirely different. It's almost like you're breathing with your heart, not your lungs. For the first 15 seconds, nothing happened. My mind kept jumping from thought to thought. But then, something strange started to happen. It was as if the thoughts began to lose their power, like waves on a lake slowly calming down. First, the big waves disappeared. The worries about money, work, relationships. Then the medium waves, the little daily irritations. And finally, even the small waves vanished. What remained was something I'd never experienced before. A silence that wasn't empty. A silence that was brimming with life, as if I were hearing the very sound of existence. And when I opened my eyes, at 3 minutes and 20 seconds had passed, but it felt like an eternity, and at the same time, it felt like a second. Now, you must be wondering, what exactly is this technique? How does it work? And most importantly, why did the monks consider it dangerous? The answer to the last question will surprise you. They didn't consider the technique dangerous. They considered dangerous the state of consciousness it provided. Imagine you spend your entire life in a dimly lit room. You get used to the shadows. Your eyes adjust. You learn to live like that. And suddenly, someone turns on a powerful light. The clarity is so intense that at first it hurts. You want to go back to the familiar shadows. This technique does that to the mind. It shows you a state of consciousness so clear, so silent, so peaceful, that when you return to your normal mental state, everything seems too noisy, too chaotic, too unnecessary. The monks knew that a person who experienced this deep silence would never be able to live the same way again. Their priorities would change. Their values would change. Their perception of what truly matters in life would be completely transformed. And that, for a consumer-driven society, would be revolutionary. But you don't have to become a monk. You don't have to abandon your life. You just need to understand one fundamental thing about how your mind works. Stop for a moment. Feel your breath now. Don't change anything. Just observe. Can you feel that there's a tiny pause between inhalation and exhalation? And another tiny pause between exhalation and the next inhalation. In those minuscule pauses, your thoughts stop. For a fraction of a second, your mind becomes completely silent. What the monk's technique does is expand those pauses, transform those micro-silences into an ocean of stillness. Harvard confirmed this in 1983. Dr. Herbert Benson, a cardiologist and professor, measured the brainwaves of people practicing this technique. What he discovered forever changed what we know about the human capacity for self-regulation. During the practice, the brain produced alpha and theta waves in a way that had never been documented. It was as if different regions of the brain began to vibrate in perfect harmony, like an orchestra that suddenly finds its rhythm. But the most impressive thing wasn't the changes during the practice. It was the changes that remained afterward. People who practiced for just 3 weeks showed 60% lower cortisol levels. Their blood pressure dropped, their heart rate stabilized, and most importantly, their ability to concentrate increased exponentially. It was as if they'd learned to operate on a different mental frequency, a frequency where the noise simply didn't exist. Tolle explains this poetically. He says most people live as if they're inside a waterfall. The sound of the falling water is so constant, they don't even realize it's there anymore. Thoughts are that waterfall. They generate such a permanent background noise, you forget that silence exists. The monk's technique doesn't stop the waterfall. It teaches you to get out from under it, to find a place where you can hear the sound of the river itself, calm, deep, eternal. And the most incredible part is, that place has always been there. You just didn't know how to get to it. But there's a crucial difference between knowing about this technique and actually practicing it. It's like the difference between reading about swimming and jumping in the water. You can understand all the movements theoretically, but until you feel the water on your skin, it's not real. But before I teach you the technique, I need to tell you something that completely changed my perspective on what's truly possible for the human mind. 3 weeks after my first experience with this breathing, something strange started happening. I was in traffic, that typical Monday morning gridlock. Normally, this would be an automatic trigger for anxiety. My mind would start firing off thoughts about being late, about meetings, about how crazy busy the day would be. But this time, it was different. It was as if I were watching these thoughts from the outside, like clouds passing in the sky. They appeared, I noticed them, and they simply dissolved, without resistance, without struggle, without drama. In that moment, I understood something profound. The technique hadn't just taught me to silence my mind for 3 minutes. It had changed my fundamental relationship with thoughts themselves, and that reminded me of a conversation Tolle had with a neuroscientist at UCLA in 2005. Dr. Daniel Siegel was studying neuroplasticity and how contemplative practices physically alter the brain's structure. What they discovered was revolutionary. People who practiced this specific technique for just 10 days showed measurable changes in gray matter density, specifically in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for what we call executive consciousness. It's like the brain develops a new muscle, a muscle that most people didn't even know existed, the muscle of conscious presence. But let me be completely honest with you about something important. This technique isn't for everyone, and I'll tell you why. You know that feeling when you're watching a really engrossing movie and suddenly someone turns on the light. For a moment, you're disoriented. You were so immersed in the story, you'd forgotten where you really were. This technique does something similar with your life. It shines a light on your consciousness that can be disconcerting at first, because you realize how much you were on autopilot, how much you were living mechanically, reacting instead of responding. I remember a woman I met at a retreat, Sarah, 42 years old, an executive at a multinational corporation. She practiced the technique for a week and then stopped completely. When I asked why, she told me something I'll never forget. It was too intense, she said. When I silenced my mind, I realized that 80% of my thoughts were about things that didn't really matter, about people I didn't even like, about problems I was creating myself. It was like looking in the mirror and seeing that I'd been wearing a mask for years. See, the technique isn't difficult. In fact, it's surprisingly simple. The hard part is dealing with the clarity it brings. But if you're willing to face that clarity, if you're tired of being a prisoner of your own thoughts, if you want to experience what it's really like to inhabit your own body and mind, then continue with me, because now I'm going to reveal something that very few people in the world know. The difference between the breathing the monks taught beginners and the breathing they reserved for their most advanced disciples. The first was just the warm-up. The second was where the real transformation happened. But first, I need to prepare you for what you're going to feel, because when I did this for the first time, I wasn't prepared for the intensity of the experience. It was a Thursday night. I was home alone. I'd just finished dinner. I decided to try the advanced version of the technique I'd found in Tibetan manuscripts translated by Tolle, honestly thinking it would be similar to the first version, just a little longer. I sat on the couch. I closed my eyes. I adjusted my posture as I'd learned, and I began the breathing. In the first 30 seconds, it was, as always, the mind began to calm. The thoughts lost their power. But then, something completely unexpected started happening. It was as if I was sinking, not physically, but consciously, as if I were descending through layers of perception I never knew existed, first past the layer of everyday thoughts, then the layer of emotions, then something I can only describe as the layer of bodily memories, and then I arrived at something that I don't have adequate words to describe. It was a silence so deep, it had presence, an emptiness so complete, it was brimming with life. It was like being at the center of the universe and at the same time being the universe itself. When I opened my eyes, 47 minutes had passed. But for me, it had been simultaneously a second and an eternity. My body was relaxed in a way I'd never experienced. My mind was clear, not empty, but clear, like a mountain lake on a windless day. And here's the most incredible part. That state of clarity didn't disappear when I returned to normal activities. It remained as a constant background to my consciousness, as if I had discovered an inner frequency that was always there, but that I had never learned to tune into. Dr. Benson of Harvard had a name for it. He called it the deep relaxation response, but the monks had a much more poetic name. They called it returning home, and that's exactly what I felt. As if after decades of wandering, lost in a mental labyrinth, I had finally found my way home. But you don't need to spend 47 minutes in meditation to experience this. The version I'm about to teach you is the same one tested and validated by Harvard, the same one that can transform your mind in just 3 minutes. This technique has 3 distinct phases. Each phase works with a different aspect of your breath, and each phase opens a different door in your consciousness. Phase 1. The mountain breath. You breathe as if you were a mountain breathing, slow, deep, unwavering. This calms the nervous system and prepares the mind to go deeper. Phase 2. The ocean breath. Here you completely change the rhythm. The breath becomes fluid, undulating, like the waves of the sea. This synchronizes different regions of the brain and creates a state of neural coherence. Phase 3. The space breath. This is the most subtle and powerful. You breathe as if space itself were breathing through you. This is where the deep silence happens. But here's the secret nobody tells you. It's not about the specific breathing techniques. It's about the intention you bring to each phase. The monks knew that the breath was just the vehicle. The destination was a state of consciousness they called a diamond mind, a mind so clear that nothing can disturb it, so present that the past and future become irrelevant, so quiet that you can hear the wisdom that has always been whispering inside you. And the most incredible part, you don't need years of practice, you don't need a retreat in Tibet, you don't need to abandon your modern life, you just need 3 minutes, and the courage to find the silence that already exists within you. So let me show you exactly how to do this, step by step, the same way I learned, the same way it transformed my life, and the same way it can transform yours. First, find a place where you won't be interrupted. It doesn't need to be silent. In fact, one of the most impressive aspects of this technique is that it works even with background noise. I've practiced it on airplanes, in offices, even at music concerts. The key isn't the external environment, it's the internal environment you create. Sit comfortably. It can be in a chair, on the couch, even standing if necessary. The monks did this in any position. The important thing is that your spine is relatively straight, not rigid but erect, as if an invisible thread were gently pulling the top of your head toward the sky. Now close your eyes. And here's the first thing that will surprise you. You're not going to try to stop your thoughts. You're not going to resist them. You're going to do the exact opposite. You're going to observe them like a scientist observes an experiment. For the next 60 seconds, just observe your mind. See what thoughts appear. Don't judge them. Don't try to change them. Just observe. It's as if you were a silent guardian watching the natural movement of your consciousness. This initial observation is crucial because most people have never really paid attention to how their thoughts work. They simply assume that they are their thoughts. But when you observe, you realize something revolutionary. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes the thoughts. Now let's go to the first phase, the mountain breath. Imagine you are an ancient mountain. You are millions of years old. You've seen entire civilizations rise and fall. Storms have come and gone. The sun has risen and set billions of times, and you have remained unwavering, present, eternal. Begin to breathe as this mountain would breathe. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold the air for 2 seconds. Exhale through your mouth for 6 seconds. Keep your lungs empty for 2 seconds. Repeat this cycle 5 times. But here's the secret that makes all the difference. It's not about counting the seconds perfectly. It's about feeling the quality of each breath. The inhale should have the quality of stability, as if you were drinking energy directly from the earth. The hold should have the quality of presence, as if you were completely here, completely now. The exhale should have the quality of release, as if you were letting go of everything you no longer need. During this first phase, you'll notice that your mind is still active. Thoughts still appear. This is perfectly normal. Remember, you are the mountain. Thoughts are like clouds passing by. They come, you notice them, they pass. The mountain remains. After 5 cycles of the mountain breath, you move to the second phase, the ocean breath. Now you are no longer a mountain. You are the ocean. Deep, fluid, powerful. Completely change the rhythm of your breath. It becomes undulating like the waves that come and go on the beach. Inhale for 3 seconds, like a wave forming. Exhale for 3 seconds, like a wave dissolving on the sand. There is no pause between inhalation and exhalation. It's a continuous, fluid, hypnotic movement. Do this for 10 cycles. And here's something fascinating that will happen. At some point during these 10 cycles, you'll feel as if it's no longer you breathing. It's as if the breath is happening through you, as if the universe were breathing and you were just a channel for this cosmic breath. Dr. Andrew Weil of the University of Arizona specifically studied this type of rhythmic breathing. He discovered that after 7 to 10 cycles, the nervous system enters a completely different mode, what he called a state of cardiac coherence. The heart, brain, and respiratory system begin to vibrate at a synchronized frequency. It's literally as if your entire body becomes a perfectly tuned musical instrument. But the third phase is where the real magic happens. The space breath. Now you are no longer a mountain or an ocean. You are space itself, the empty space between the stars, the space within the atoms, the space that contains everything but is not limited by anything. This breath is almost imperceptible. Inhale so gently that someone sitting next to you wouldn't be able to tell you're breathing. Exhale even more gently. It's as if you were breathing with every cell of your body simultaneously. Don't count cycles. Don't measure time. Simply dissolve into the breath. Allow the breath to become so subtle that you're not sure if you're inhaling or exhaling. It is at this point that something extraordinary happens. The thoughts don't stop. They simply become irrelevant. It's as if you were observing them from such a great distance that they lose any power over you. You become aware of the space between thoughts, and gradually, this space expands until it occupies your entire experience. Remain in this state for as long as feels natural. It could be a minute, it could be 10 minutes. Your body knows, your consciousness knows. Trust the process. Now let me tell you about Marcus, a 45-year-old engineer I met in São Paulo. Marcus had suffered from chronic anxiety for 15 years. He'd tried therapy, medication, yoga, everything. Nothing worked for long. When he came to me, he was skeptical. "Another breathing technique," he said. "I've tried hundreds." But Marcus had a specific motivation. His 8-year-old daughter had started having panic attacks, and he couldn't help her because he couldn't even help himself. It was destroying him from the inside out. I taught Marcus the technique exactly as I'm teaching you. He practiced religiously for a week. On the 8th day, he called me crying. "Something happened yesterday," he said. "My daughter had another panic attack. Normally I'd spiral into despair with her, but yesterday it was different. I did the technique for 2 minutes while holding her, and something incredible happened. She calmed down, not because of anything I said or did. She calmed down because I was calm, as if my peace had been contagious." That's the part many people don't understand about this technique. It doesn't just transform you, it transforms the energetic field around you. Other people feel it, even without knowing what it is. Dr. Rollin McCraty of the Institute of HeartMath has been researching this phenomenon for decades. He's discovered that when a person enters a state of cardiac coherence, the same state the monk's technique produces, their electromagnetic field expands and affects other people within a radius of up to 10 feet. It's scientifically and literally true that your inner peace creates peace around you. But let me warn you about something that might happen the first few times you practice, especially in the 3rd phase. You might feel like you're disappearing, like the sensation of your body is dissolving, like you no longer know where you end and the world begins. Don't be alarmed, it's not dangerous. It's the exact opposite. It's your nervous system finally relaxing on such a deep level that you temporarily forget where you place the usual boundaries of your identity. The monks called it little death. Not physical death, but the temporary death of the ego, of the separate sense of self. And on the other side of this little death, a version of you is born that is simultaneously more you and less you than you ever imagined possible. Dr. Jeffrey Martin of Harvard University specifically studied this phenomenon in people practicing advanced contemplative techniques. He discovered that there's a state of consciousness he called selfless awareness. In this state, the person retains all their mental faculties, all their intelligence, all their ability to function in the world. But there's a fundamental absence of the feeling of being a separate self, struggling against the world. Instead, there's a direct experience of being the consciousness itself, observing life unfolding. It might sound too abstract, but when you experience it, it's the most natural thing in the world. It's as if you've spent your whole life carrying a heavy backpack without realizing it, and suddenly someone helps you take it off. The lightness is instantaneous. The freedom is palpable. Now maybe you're wondering, and then what? What do I do with this experience when I return to normal life? That's the most important question. Because the true transformation doesn't happen during the 3 minutes of practice. It happens in the remaining 24 hours of your day. Here's what I realized after months of practicing this technique. You begin to carry a bodily memory of silence. It's like having an internal anchor to a state of peace that you now know exists. When someone irritates you in traffic, instead of reacting automatically, there's a small pause, a micro-hesitation where you remember, I know a deeper place than this. And in that remembrance you have a choice. You can react in the habitual way, or you can respond from a place of clarity. When anxiety arises about the future, instead of being dragged along by the current of worried thoughts, there's a part of you that remains in the center. Like the eye of the hurricane, you can feel the emotional storm swirling around you, but you are no longer the storm. You are the space where the storm happens, and perhaps most importantly, you stop trying to escape the present, because you finally understand that the present isn't a place where you're trapped. It's the place where you are free. Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, a pioneer of mind-body medicine, always said that mindfulness isn't about feeling good, it's about feeling real. And this technique shows you what it means to be truly real. Not the edited version of you that you present to the world, not the idealized version you wish you were, but the authentic version that exists beneath all the layers of conditioning and personal history. It's you before you learned to be you. But here's something I discovered that completely changed my perspective on this practice. The technique isn't the goal. The technique is just a reminder of who you really are when you're not trying to be anyone in particular. The monks knew this. That's why they considered the knowledge dangerous. Not because the technique was dangerous, but because the truth was dangerous. The truth that you already are exactly what you've been searching for, that the peace you seek isn't in any external place. It's the fundamental nature of your own consciousness. And when you really understand this, when it's no longer just an intellectual idea, but a lived experience, everything changes. Your priorities reorganize naturally. You stop chasing things that can't give you what you really want. You stop resisting experiences that are inevitable. You stop trying to be different from what you are. Not because you become passive or apathetic, but because you finally understand the difference between acting from fear and acting from love, between reacting from lack and responding from fullness. Sarah, that executive I mentioned earlier, sought me out 6 months later. I was wrong, she said. It wasn't too intense, it was intense enough, and I needed that intensity. I needed to wake up from the sleepwalking I was living. She had changed jobs, ended a relationship that hadn't been working for years, started spending more time with people she truly loved. It wasn't that the technique told me what to do, she explained. It was that it showed me who I was when I wasn't afraid. And that person knew exactly what to do. You see, the technique doesn't give you answers. It reveals the part of you that always knew the answers. And now, as you prepare to experience this for the first time, or the first time really, I want you to remember one thing. The secret the Tibetan monks guarded for 800 years wasn't really a secret about breathing. It was a secret about remembering. Breathing is just the key. What it unlocks is the memory of who you were before you learned to forget. Before you learned you needed something outside of yourself to be complete. Before you learned you had to be different to be loved. Before you learned that the present moment wasn't enough. When you sit down to do this practice, you're not trying to achieve some special state. You're simply coming home, to the place you never really left, but had forgotten how to find. And maybe, when you open your eyes after those 3 minutes, you'll understand why the monks called it the bridge between world, because you will have crossed the bridge between the world where you are a problem to be solved and the world where you are a mystery to be lived, between the world where you're always becoming someone and the world where you simply are. Welcome to the other side of the bridge. Your true life is waiting for you there.